All right, the hour of 6:30 having arrived, I'll call the regular meeting of the Columbus Plan Commission for February 20th, 2020 to order. Matt, will you take the roll call, please?
Sure. Johnson.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Bastion.
Here.
Monday.
Here.
Parpart.
Here.
Traxler and Zapataki are excused.
All right, thank you. This meeting has been properly publicly posted and noticed.
Yes.
Great. Item 4 on the agenda. We'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, this is our working agenda for the evening. The minutes from January 16th are in your packet. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the January 16.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those signify in favor by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes from January 16th are approved. Moving on to item 6, comments from citizens. I see we have a couple people here. Are you here for an agenda item, or are you?
Yes, they are here for 8A, so
Okay,
they can speak when we are in that, under that item.
all right, so nobody present for.
Unless they have.
For
a
general
different-
comments.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on from item 6 to item 7, any unfinished business? Nothing is on the agenda. Okay. Hearing none. The good stuff. Item 8, let's go with 8A. Our first item here is to review and consider recommendation to the council for the condominium plat application for John and Judy Morshauser. Did I pronounce that correctly? Great.
So this was an application that came to me probably a week or two ago. So they're in the process of building out the final phase of the development. And one of the things that have changed recently was the floodplain map in 2016 was recently has impacted their property. So essentially, the condo plat kind of finalizes their last phase, and it removed one property from their previous condo plat and just finalizes their condo plat so they can move forward and build everything out and get final occupancy. Being that this has already been approved and this is just amending the condo plat, I didn't see anything that was concerning to me, and I would recommend the approval of this plat. Just to show you here, if you wanted to turn on your screens in front of you, you can follow along. Otherwise, it's up on the big screen, trying to make better use of the technology that we have here. Showing what I received from the applicant. The big area to note, it's in this northwest portion. That area is the FEMA flood map or flood plain. It's in the flood fringe. And they had a few options. They could have went through the Loma F process to have that area removed from the floodplain, but they have elected to replat as shown. So with that, any questions for me or the applicant is here to answer any questions you may have.
Is that line as shown, as determined by your surveyor, an actual ground survey elevation? Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Do the applicants have anything to add?
And the only reason we're doing it, when they changed the floodplain in 16 to change the maps. Up until that point, it was a moot point, but when we do the numbers and the time it would take to take it back off the floodplain, I think we're just gonna eliminate that last building we were gonna have there.
All right. Any other discussion? All right. So the agenda item says review and consider recommendation to council. If I don't have any further discussion here, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to recommend this to change to the council.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending to council for approval signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Send it on to council.
Yes. And just so you know, that will be on the March 3rd meeting. You guys, the applicants could be there if you want. Typically, when they're approved at Plan Commission, they have not been overturned by council, but I'll leave that up to you if you want to be there for the approval or not. And then shortly thereafter, I'll coordinate with you to get the signatures needed by mayor and clerk, okay?
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is it 3 buildings that are yet to be built?
One is in progress right now.
The ones that are bold
Yeah, correct.
are coming
44
online?
is in progress right
484?
44.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to 8B, review and discuss the draft site plan ordinance. Matt, will you walk us through this one?
Sure. So this is one that started at our development team meetings probably last summer and has been hanging out there for a while. And I'm bringing this to the Plan Commission for just some of their feedback and what they think before we take this final steps and bring it to council and have it in our ordinance. So one of the issues that came up is we were reviewing a project that was a permitted use. And when you look at our code, technically, the things that we were asking of the applicant weren't really in our code. So if they said, no, I really don't feel like giving you a landscaping plan or a lighting plan, I would argue that we probably didn't have the teeth to actually enforce it. I mean, most folks, when they're putting their site plans together, are going through like the state building plan, or going through state building plan approvals. So most of these items are being submitted anyways. But then after some discussion, we're like, well, this probably should be codified someplace. And right now, I'm on our municipal code website. Really, the only place that spells out what we need for submittal requirements is if it's a conditional use. So a conditional use will go through and ask for a site plan. Building. I mean, obviously, there's other parts of our code where we're asking for site plans and things of that nature, but as it pertains to like a permitted use, that wasn't clearly spelled out. So, you know, there's site plans, building plans, grading, stormwater, lighting, landscaping are the primary ones that we're asking for when we're doing this. So, as a result of that, we decided, well, maybe we should draft an ordinance. And for the time being, if you look at, I'm in the wrong materials. Our city attorney proposed to put this under Chapter 78, right, for the time being. So Chapter 78 is our planning section for the city. The rationale behind that is there are some things that under Chapter 90, which is our subdivision and land division code, and Chapter 114, which is our zoning codes, that would both apply to these questions. So he thought it was best if it went under Chapter or Section 78. So under this, we would ask for site plans, Obviously, just a project narrative, like, 1 to 5-page description of what the project is. Site plan showing a variety of things. Building plans, grading and stormwater plans, lighting plans, and landscaping plans. So I guess with that, I just want Plan Commission's thoughts on this and whether, you feel like it should be in Chapter 78 or maybe Chapter 114, or just any thoughts in general of before we bring this to council. I just want to make sure Plan Commission knows any changes to ordinances that would impact Plan Commission, so.
I don't have an opinion as to where it should go in the code. I generally have the opinion that cross-references need to be diligently checked. For instance, subdivision is under Chapter 90, is right in the first paragraph, right?
Mhm.
And rezoning is in Chapter 114. And then it says very generically, or in other certain circumstances, right? Do we have some idea of what other circumstances there are? Those kind of things should be cross-referenced, in my opinion. One related question: doesn't the subdivision ordinance have engineering standards in it with regard to roadway design, utility design, all of those things, right?
It's, to complicate things, I would say those types of things would be more under Chapter 86, which is streets, sidewalks, and other public places. So that chapter, I'm not an expert in that chapter because I don't use it very frequently, but I know it designates things like, obviously how you build sidewalks, how you build roads, and then what you can do as far as like getting like a work on right-of-way permit if needed, or connecting a driveway and getting a driveway permit and things of that nature. So I would have to go back and look at that section a little bit more closely to answer that, but I think those answers that you're looking for would be under Chapter 86.
Okay, but all right. Yeah, I guess I would also caution against having these things all repeated somewhere, because then an applicant will generally argue, well, which one am I supposed to follow? Both, neither, which, that kind of thing. So.
The actually probably the ideal way to do it, and I know, well, and actually Ed's on the ordinance committee, is as we're going through this, the ordinance committee, hopefully we'll get some of this too, but as I said, I wanted Plan Commission's input, is having, because this is very similar to what is under that conditional use right now. I mean, literally that's where we took the framework for this. Having one area where we talk about submittals, and then, you'd say for conditional use, submittals are C section,
Right.
would be the easiest way to do
Yep.
it, because
No, I
then
agree.
you don't, I mean, theoretically speaking, you eliminate redundancy, and then on top of that, it eliminates the chance that you would like accidentally change one section and not the other.
Right, and that's
then
what I'm. And
it
that's
would
what
be
I'm saying.
consistent throughout.
So, right, we want to check and make sure that there's not other stuff already in the code somewhere, because then that should be stricken, cleaned
Yes.
out in favor of this. We're on the same page.
Yeah. No, yeah.
The last comment I would have is that there's often a clause that does give somebody the ability, whether it's you or the city engineer, or, it gives somebody the authority to require additional information as they see fit. I know there's always a sort of this argument, well, that's just what we would call a God clause, right? You can just demand anything you want.
Yeah.
But that's that's often in ordinances, and that gives latitude to ask for pertinent information in cases where it's necessary, so.
Yeah. No, I was just seeing in our existing code if it said something like along those lines where the zoning administrator or city engineer could request though, or council could make a request for additional information based on the proposal. And I do not see it actually in our existing code either.
Okay. Well, that would be.
But
that would be something
it
to
does say
consider.
I can waive some of these things, which in a lot of cases I have in the past where I say, no, you're not building anything, so we don't need building plans, you know.
Right,
So
right, just like in certain circumstances, some of these don't apply. In other circumstances, there are things that are not on the list
Yeah.
that do legitimately apply.
yeah,
So there needs to be a mechanism for that.
Just a little afterthought here. If we end up with a situation where we have duplication of wording and it's not exact, there's usually a clause or something in there that stipulates which takes effect. And I don't know if we have one of them clauses in here or not, because usually, from what I remember, it's the first ordinance down has dominance in a lot of areas. You know, when it comes to building codes and things like that, they work off of a master plan with, and then when they get into their subsidiary plans, the dominant one is still the master, right? I think, and we don't have any such language that I know of in this situation. If we're accidentally going to be creating a duplication of project narratives or anything like that, you know, we have to have a back door that's going to cover our butts, so to speak.
So a specific precedence clause. Something on the order of,
Precedence clause.
the intent of this ordinance is to take precedence over any other,
Right.
any other checklist.
We could do it
might-
that way or have.
Right. Right, yeah. Eventually you want to go through and you want to eradicate all those so there's less and less question, but yeah.
Yeah, but you always miss something.
yeah.
Yes, this catch-all clause, as you're calling it, you call it the God clause, and I call it a catch-all clause that allows them to, oh, we missed it and it's not specifically in here. That's what you're talking about, right? To give the zoning administrator or whoever is requiring this the authority to catch something that isn't necessarily enumerated in here. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's correct. And it's more than, oh, well, we missed putting something in the list. So this list should cover things that are reasonably common to most site
Yeah.
plans. But there are, and I wish I could think of a good example right off the bat,
Well,
but
I remember when Drexel applied for their above ground fuel pump, that was your not everyday, and it was not your not everyday plan commission item, and it was one of those things that I found kind of in obscure reference in our code under like the supplemental section of the zoning code. And it was like, well, we really didn't have any way of asking formally requirements for it. So that would give me the latitude of saying, okay, trying to give me like a basic site plan, give me the sketch of what like the holding tank would look like, so we kind of have an idea, so I can run it by the fire chief. Things like that, are kind of specialized and aren't common. So that would be one example of something that would probably, where I would have needed more information so we could have confidently answered the question.
And what I'm saying is Uriah is talking about that he'd like to see some sort of language to that effect in here.
Yeah.
And I'm suggesting then that perhaps as part of your zoning administrator listserv or somebody, that you check and say, hey, does anybody have this sort of catch-all language?
Yeah.
As a resource for you to find it. We've got the MuniCode website, unless you start plunking in individual cities and randomly searching till you find the right one perhaps you could ask for the type of language that he's asking for.
I'm sure, I'm pretty confident that Paul would have that language readily available.
As well, okay, then starting with the ordinance, on number 2, authority, is direct strong enough of a word? The zoning administrator, et cetera, may direct an applicant to provide? Should we say require? Are we confident that direct is good enough?
Well, I think part of it gets back to kind of what I said, under the conditional use. There's been times where some of these requirements I've waived because they're not needed, so.
Well, I'm going, first the require, you can direct them. What happens if they ignore the direction? Require, to me, sounds like a stronger word than direct. Unless everybody's comfortable with the word direct.
Well, technically, part of the requirements, I mean, I wouldn't then have to approve it if they can't provide a site plan. You know, I mean,
All right,
well,
all right, if you're comfortable with the word direct, that's fine. Where is your waiver authority in here? You said you have waiver authority.
no, I don't think that's written in here. That was written in the, under 11426 is
Okay.
what I was saying. So, under 11426, for conditional use, let's say it's an existing building, and they're not doing any addition, well, you usually don't need building plans for something that they're just reoccupying.
Right, then I guess back to Ed's question, does
Occupying,
114
yeah.
have precedence over this? Because this is talking about site plans. And you're saying that you can waive certain things. Can you waive certain things in a site plan?
So, for, under 11426, that only pertains to conditional uses.
Okay,
So this would be referring to permitted uses and other, you're right, that's a good question for Paul. You know, if it's a conditional use permit, do they have to follow 11426 or do they have to follow 7815 as is proposed?
okay, and if you would like waiver authority, we should build it in.
I think that would make sense. I mean,
okay.
I mean, a lot of these, basically a lot of these items for whether it's landscaping, grading, I mean, it all assumes new construction.
Okay.
And, although that being said, for permitted uses, for the most part, if they're doing a building project, we're gonna need to see all these things. So, I mean,
I know we tinkered
Yeah.
with some language giving you waiver authority, et cetera. That was one of the first meetings I had. And you're saying that you have waiver authority. Are you saying you have waiver authority in this ordinance as proposed?
no, not that I see
Do
anywhere.
you think you should? If so, it should probably be codified in the ordinance.
I think it would make sense.
Okay.
Because there would be some cases where we would say this is not needed.
So can you grab the language that we gave you waiver authority there? Because
Yes.
when it says direct and it lists all these things, there is an out in, one of these says where required. Yeah, project narrative, A2, where applicable, blah, blah, blah. And then turning to landscaping plans, sub F, item 3, says name of landscape design professional. I would, should that again be a place where applicable instead of, maybe they don't have a landscape plan, landscape design professional.
Matt, you may want to pick apart a few different phrases here. I think one is discretion, that administering this might be at your discretion. Also setting which one has precedence, and maybe another one for clarifying disputes, which I think discretion would cover that. So there's a few parts, I think, that we would want, give you the authority to clear things up.
Yeah.
So somebody doesn't get stuck in red tape,
Yeah.
or, spend 2-3 months because there's some word out of place.
I'm trying to clean that up now, but, because it could be argued that you have to have a landscape design professional, whereas at the beginning it says, where applicable, you should have this.
Yeah, so if there was a clause that said, you know, the zoning administrator has discretion to manage this, all that's covered. Then all those languages would defer back to him.
Where I notice things inconsistent, I tend to get hung up.
Yeah, and likely there's some phrase that'll conflict with something else, or be gray or interpreted, and you need the out to be able to clear that up. Yeah.
Okay. I guess then for next steps, I'm thinking maybe this should go to the ordinance committee as well before, I mean, I know at a certain point, I will be meeting with the ordinance committee to talk about our zoning code. I haven't been formally asked yet. I don't know when they're gonna get to that. I know, HLPC's been, or the historic landmarks section of our code's been the big initial discussion.
As chair of the ordinance review subcommittee, I guess my feeling is something like this that has a governing body that are the experts, I don't know that it then needs to go to the ordinance committee and then to the COW and then to the council. Just like the cable commission ordinance, I would hope is going to come straight to council.
Okay.
And so I would be very comfortable with this body establishing what they would like and then it going straight to council. And if it has to come back to this body one more time for some of these tweaks,
Okay.
that's fine. But I don't think what's in front of us would need to come back before the ordinance
Okay.
committee.
Well, especially
We don't
since
need
this
to
isn't
step on
part
your-
of the ordinance at all right now.
Right.
I mean, this is just a proposal.
Sure, but I mean, we're the subject matter experts and.
Yep, no,
and
I
then
can-
it should go straight to council. The ordinance committee, in my mind, is for areas that don't have a commission, such as the cable commission or the planning commission. So I think we can save you a step.
Okay.
Do you have a preference for timeline when this gets adopted? Just in terms of making your job easier as an
Well,
administrator of,
this-
all things site plan?
This, to be honest with you, this has been hanging out there for a while, just because I have not had time to bring this forward. There's a lot of things in our code that need to be fixed. That, I just make do with what we have, the best of my ability, so, and this is another one of those things where it'd be easier to have. So far, nobody's challenged when we said, well, we need this. Nobody said, well, show me where it's in your code that you need this. Most people realize that what we're asking is fairly common, throughout other communities in the state. So nobody says, well, who says we have to do a landscaping plan? Like, so we work through it. But I guess I would feel better if our code accurately reflected the day-to-day operations that I do as a zoning administrator. It just makes sense to me to have that. And it provides transparency. You want people, as they come to do business in the city of Columbus, to have a clear understanding of what we expect.
Sure.
So, what's my timeline? As soon as they can get done. I
Sure.
mean, within.
It's going to make administration easier. Thus far, you've been able to manage the administration without too much of a hassle, but it's going to make things better. Okay.
I mean, to be honest with you, when you look at the amount of development review we've had over the last year, most of our meetings have been about the comp plan. So, it's not like I'm swimming in zoning applications on a daily basis right now. So, and maybe because of that, I'm focusing on the other things that need to get off my plate before I can focus on this. So,
I'm going to suggest something to everybody here. That, number one, I think most of us probably saw this for the first time a few days ago, which is fine.
mm-hmm.
I think what I'll suggest is that anybody who has comments about this, make notes, submit them to Matt by the next meeting, okay?
How about a week before the next meeting?
Hang on, by the next meeting. We won't even talk about it at the next meeting. And then for the April meeting, between the March and April meeting, you can take whatever comments people have, do your best to interpret them and modify this. And then at the April meeting, we'll discuss the new version, and anybody who brought comments, bring your comments. You can compare your comments to a new version. and then we can have kind of a targeted discussion. Because I do think, especially you guys with your comments, you're right, this is definitely a version 1.0. It'll be good to have this, but it needs some work, and probably more work than can be done in a sitting session like this.
Okay, well, possibly. I thought there were just a couple minor tweaks and I was hoping you could fix them by next meeting if at all possible. Because I do want to make your life easier and give you the authority to stand on it.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for a
Well,
complete
and
rewrite.
as I said, to date, I haven't had anybody say, well, I'm not giving you that. So technically, I mean, I guess I do, well,
It would be valuable.
Yeah.
You know, because when the time comes, there's no time to catch back up if there's a problem.
correct.
So it's better
Yeah.
to have the tool available for you before that issue comes up.
Yeah, no, so we're okay with the Uriah's proposal? And to,
I think that gives a little space of time
Yeah.
for people to write down comments, but it doesn't just throw it off into oblivion, so there's no end date on it.
okay, well,
So,
thank you for the feedback, and I'll look forward to the comments I get in March and go from there. All right.
all right, any further discussion on that? Okay. All right, let's move on to 8C, review and discuss draft chapters of the Columbus Comprehensive Plan.
I didn't get so tonight we're talking about intergovernmental cooperation, and I was commenting to Uriah before the meeting that in a past life I wrote, I don't know, 5 or 6 different comp plans, and I always thought, oh, you know, this is like a simple chapter, because usually it's not very long, and it talks about existing relationships you have with whether it's the county or the state or what have you. And then after sitting through, I don't know how many council meetings over the last 2 years, I realized like every council meeting at least has some sort of agreement or discussion of an agreement on it. So it is critical. And really what I tried to do today was just kind of go through and just identify. I looked through the contracts that we have on record and just make sure I have an accurate listing of who we have a relationship with. So the first paragraph, as always, is essentially taken from the state statute talking about certain requirements that we have to hit for this element. One thing, the second paragraph I think is critical to talk about is that a lot of times we focus on what goes in our silo in here in the city of Columbus, but there are a lot of issues, and there are a lot of issues that this plan addresses that have that don't just follow political boundaries, right? They don't just stop at the edge of Columbus. Things like watersheds, labor force, transportation, housing, natural disasters, and there's a long list that you could go through, but those are kind of the most common ones. That's why taking a step back and thinking about this is fairly critical. So tonight I'm just going to go through areas where we already have cooperation. And as always, when I get a final draft, it's going to have a draft to talk about, identify goals. Ed probably can speak to this as well. The council recently met with the school board, and I think from the vibe I got, that was the first time they met since, 2013. It's been a while, according to both sides, and that was a really productive meeting. And I think, this setting policies and goals in this chapter that the city can follow, I think, would be key. And not just, the school board. One of the groups that, that I'm probably guilty of as a staff member that I probably don't have enough time to create relationships with is the county. There's a lot of services that we get through the county, and that's one of those things I know in the back of my mind I want to get to maximize that relationship. But there's so much internal work that we're trying to do that it's always hard to look beyond your boundaries to talk about common issues that you have at the county or other areas. So I guess it's it's important. So moving forward, first one, talking about Columbia County, most of people probably don't realize, but a lot of the services county provides or has to provide are statutory requirements. So they provide a lot of services that are different than the city, like health and human services, emergency management, land information, register of deeds. If you need a birth certificate or a marriage certificate, you got to go to the county. So on file, when we look through our contracts folder, there's a few agreements that we already have in place. So we have a hazmat agreement that actually was at council on Monday night, right? Monday night? Yeah. Basically, we have an agreement with the county that they'll come in and essentially help us, dispose of any hazardous materials that ends up, properly dispose of any hazardous materials that is within the city. They'll help us take care of that. We have a senior nutrition program through the county Aging and Disability Resource Center. So they come in and use actually the senior center to provide this program to our residents. We have an agreement in place with them for the radio tower that's at the end of Industrial Drive that we use for police, fire, and medical services. And on top of that, I believe they're the dispatch. Our PD does not have a dispatch locally. I think it's housed at the county. And then we do have mutual aid agreements for emergency and fire services. The school district is another, as I mentioned, we met. Yep. Did I miss?
Well, I'm wondering, I threw out there, does the library count?
I talk about the library here in a minute.
Okay, maybe I'll get there.
And
Let you do your work.
If there is something I missed, because I tried to go through, and that's something that I might, once the comp plan's done, and once we have a new city administrator, sit down and talk with him on the best way to have this organized, because, and Patrick might have had something in his, on his documents, but like some sort of spreadsheet or some way to track like when these things need to get renewed, I think would be helpful, because there are a lot of them. I mean, there are a lot of different contracts that were in that folder. So, school district, as I mentioned, we met with the school district recently, and that was positive. There are a few agreements that we have in place with the school district, mainly for the athletic fields, and then we also we have an agreement for bleachers, because we provide the bleachers out at the football field / baseball field. And then also we have a agreement to use this room so they can televise the school board meetings. So those were the two primary examples I saw in the under school board. We also, as many of you know, we straddle Dodge County. There are 3 parcels, basically the wastewater treatment plant and the recycling center, that are technically in Dodge County down on River Road. But I guess due to that, being that we're right on the border, we've been able to partner with Dodge County on a few things. I know we have the stray animal contract with Dodge County Humane Society, so they'll come in and handle, I think it's a certain amount each year, and then anything above that's like a fee on top of the flat fee. And then also we have a 911 joint powers agreement with their sheriff's department. And some of the other ones working through here, there aren't as many, so I don't bullet point it out. So I know it's a different format, but town of Elba, the big one for Elba is they have a sanitary sewer district that goes to our wastewater treatment plant. So we have an agreement in place with them for that. Same thing for Village of Fall River. Village Fall River in 2010, instead of replacing their wastewater treatment plant, they found it was more cost effective to run a force main all the way down to our treatment plant and have it served there. So we have an agreement in place that details the costs and all that good stuff when you think about wastewater treatment. Emergency medical services. This is one. So the next couple ones get to the point where we're kind of the hub, but we partner with all the towns essentially all the towns that surround us. So for emergency medical services, We have Lifestar, which is down on Water Street. Well, it's actually a private entity. It's not like the city owns it, but the city of Columbus, town of Columbus, town of Elba, town of Fountain Prairie, Hampden, Portland, and York all come together to share the costs for emergency medical services. I know right now council has discussed or has been approached, I think, by a few more to join that, but I'm not really sure where that's exactly at. I don't think it's been approved yet. But so that's another example of, partnering to have, medical service, EMS. Fire service is the same way. Obviously, the fire station's, right downtown here, but that fire station serves essentially almost the same towns that the EMS covers. So it's Columbus, Elba, Columbus, Portland, Columbus, Hampden, and York. And part of the agreement is obviously we provide fire service, but then they also, all those entities split the costs of any purchase or maintenance of equipment. I couldn't find a copy of all the mutual aid agreements that we had, but so essentially we do have agreements in place with counties. And being that we're near the border of 3 counties, Dane County is only a couple miles down the road, and then Dodge and Columbia, we have mutual aid agreements. So basically what this means is if we have some sort of disaster in town or some sort of event in town and our staff needs help, we can call other surrounding fire, police, EMS, and they can come help us. Likewise, if somebody else is having an event where they need help, they can ask for help and we go help them. It's a reciprocal agreement that we have in place, and it works fairly well. The library, as you said, I need to follow up with Lindsay over at the library to get more information. I do know we're the hub for basically Eastern Columbia County. We serve Fall River, Elba, the surrounding areas. When you actually look at the strategic plan for the library, there's people that come from Beaver Dam and all over Eastern Columbia County that use our library. Yes, Brad?
I suppose when you talk to her, she'll note that we're part of the South Central Library District, so we've got access to Madison and all the surrounding cities.
I know I mentioned that under utilities and community facilities section element. But you're right, that's probably because it's kind of an intergovernmental arrangement. I probably should add
is
that.
nice.
That's a good point. So that is a good point.
I find I shop at quite a few libraries because of that. So we have access to a lot of places.
Okay. What is it? South Central Library. Yeah, okay. The name's what? No, yeah, I know. So, but and then I mentioned this actually before too. With state agencies, really primarily the DNR and transportation are the two ones that the city has the most direct involvement with as far as services go. I mean, DOA does a lot of, as the name implies, a lot of the admin work, but really as far as, I mean, obviously at DNR, with floodplain, wetlands, that, and then transportation, with the programs that they offer to help, are really the two primary agencies. As I said, at a certain point here, there may be more that I need to identify. I've looked through what we have on file for contracts and tried to hit all the ones that I could find. If you know of more, please share. This isn't a final draft by any stretch. Moving on to really the last part is just talking about tools for intergovernmental cooperation. So under state statute, there's really 3 primary tools. So you start under 66-0301. That's intergovernmental cooperation, and through this you can do, it basically allows for us to do intergovernmental agreements. When you look through our, the contracts that we have in place, you know, like for example, Fall River joining our sewer service area, that was done through an intergovernmental agreement. So this is probably the most common way intergovernmental cooperation occurs, is through these types of agreements. Boundary agreements is something that we have not done in Columbus, but it's something that can be done under 66-307. Essentially, under a boundary agreement is you'd have basically, you know, a buffer between here and, let's say, if we did it with the town of Columbus or the town of Elba, it'd buffer within a mile. We'd basically have to have a committee that would get together and basically determine, for lack of better wording, which areas would, you know, not go into the city and which areas could potentially be annexed. That is one of the tools. I don't know how useful that would be right now to the city. I mean, I think that would be something that could be explored if there was interest from one of the towns surrounding, saying, hey, we want, you know, in one of the areas, specifically for the town of Columbus, like what's going to happen, like going out Highway 60. You know, I mean, that's an area where there could be some development as things fill up in the city. I can't imagine there would be a demand until the area within the city is filled out. And that, I mean, who knows when that would be? I mean, that could be 20 years, 30 years, maybe quicker. But for the time being, I don't see that being a huge need, I guess. And the last one that I really want to talk about is municipal revenue sharing. So this is under 66-305. Basically, as it sounds, I mean, you come into an agreement to share revenue based on kind of shared services between a couple municipalities. Now, underneath this, there's a few others that I'll probably add to this section, you know, especially when you're talking about extraterritorial plat review or extraterritorial zoning. But, I mean, those really aren't, these are the items that gets the cooperation done. There's, I guess, those things like extraterritorial plat review is more, there's interaction, there's communication, but it's not like you're sharing of a service, or there's, technically you don't have to cooperate. You could say, no, I don't want to approve your plat because,
those
you
are,
know, so.
those are statutory.
Correct.
It's that boundary agreement.
Yeah.
If there's a conflict, that helps clear that
Correct.
up. So
Yeah.
the extraterritorial stuff is sort of the default mode, and
Yeah.
this is a tool to help
Yeah.
jigger that
So,
around.
and I will get into those. I mean, I didn't list. There was a few others that I had listed, but I didn't have it, I guess, formally prepared. The other thing is the, I like to refer to the element guides that were created for this. Well, in Smart Growth is 20 years old, so some of these guides are about 20 years old. So some of the statutes in the guide that DOA originally created are completely out of date. So trying to say, well, maybe that tool, maybe I shouldn't talk about that tool. So there's still a little bit of work to do on that end. But as always, you know, eventually when a final draft comes, we'll have draft goals, policies, and objectives as jumping off points for discussion for the Plan Commission to consider before a plan is adopted. Are there any questions on that?
Excuse me, just a couple little things so that they don't get missed is in the title for the tools, intergovernmental cooperations, got a typo in the middle of that. Intergovernmental.
Oh, I missed an end, yeah.
You know, sometimes they have weird spellings, but.
Oh, I didn't print off an extra. I'll make a note, thank you.
And then the fourth line. Then the fourth line, utter, probably should be under, I imagine.
Yeah,
unless you were referring to zoning for cows, I'm not sure. But
Well, that wouldn't even be spelled right, because I believe udders too.
It's two.
I may have. Ed, did you catch that?
I have several if you want them.
No,
but,
it's, you can give it to me after.
Yes.
Here, you know what, I'll just fix them right now, because otherwise I'll probably of course, the Word document's still gonna be whatever. But,
I'm not, there's a number of stylistic things
Oh.
that I can address
That's
at some
fine.
other point. I do have two areas. I'm just wondering, broader stylistically, existing areas of cooperation, we start with geographic areas, the first 1, 2, 3, or geographic or governmental areas, and then we switch to concepts. After Village of Fall River, it
Yeah.
goes to emergency medical services, and I'm wondering if there should be a separate heading category or something like that. To me, we've been talking about these governmental entities, and then all of a sudden we talk concepts, and I'm just wondering if there should be a different category.
You know,
or
I
something.
probably could add a category to make a. I mean, really, I kind of started with the bigger ones, and then I realized I'm like, well, I'm not going to create something that says, oh, we work with the town of Fountain Prairie just for. I was just like, it's easier to talk about the emergency medical group as a whole and the rural fire group as a whole. So no, I agree, and I'll put something in there for a different heading
Okay.
of some sort.
Then, again, just under the tools for intergovernmental cooperation, the first one, it indicates the most common use has been for the sharing public services, so that it's indicating we're currently using it, or we have used it. And I'm just wondering, I throw out there, under the other two, because you say that we're not using boundary agreements or
No.
municipal revenue, would it make, since this is a snapshot in time,
Yeah.
should it say currently Columbus has no boundary agreements and Columbus does not engage in municipal
I can
revenue
do that,
sharing?
yeah.
So that we capture, since the one we did say we use or have used, maybe the other two, we're not using these even though they exist.
Yep. So, the one thing I also wanted to, well, are there any questions about this element? Ed? Oh, I thought you were raised, sorry. I'll just give a quick update. I've been working with Rupert Milkie to try to get a tool that would help with the future land use element, as we discussed last week, or last month. So that I was hoping to have something so we'd have some more analysis for what our plan means moving forward. That has not come to fruition yet. And when the tool's in place and when the data's there, we will go through and evaluate, much like we did last month. I don't know, for those who weren't here, if they got a chance to see the meeting online, but I thought it was a good review of a lot of data. So that was just kind of a quick update on that. But other than that, I do not have anything else. With this chapter being done, really, then we have pretty much a draft of almost all the chapters. The only thing is implementation, and I'm not going to write that until we start having goals, objectives, and policies, and then talking about implementation. So that's going to be the second to last thing that we do before we create like an executive summary that I can give to council members and folks when they join Plan Commission, so they know it's hopefully the 10-page version of the comp plan that gets to basically that talks about basically it'll be two things. It'll show the future land use map, and it'll basically talk about all the goals, objectives, and policies. That's what I think it will end up being. So, any other questions?
No question, but I do want to compliment you for the depth of work that you put into this, and You clearly are working very hard on it, and I appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that presentation and discussion. We are down at number 9. Adjournment. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.